Hey guys, Theo Gogos with Keller Williams Realty here and team lead of the Infinity Real Estate team. Today I'm going to briefly be going through my seller select marketing plan. This is typically what I go over at a listing appointment when I meet clients in person to potentially sell their house. So I'm going to keep it very brief today, just give you an idea of what to expect. And then if we ever have any questions or want to go through this in more detail, I'd be happy to do so. So first and foremost, like I said, Theodore Gogos with the Infinity Real Estate team here at Keller Williams Realty. A little bit about me. I'm not going to go through this in great detail by any means. You're welcome to read that at your convenience. But two things I do want to mention. The first being I do have my associate broker's license. That is a step up from your typical real estate salesperson license. I take pride in that because it was additional education. I did need to pass a separate exam. And it can be a little bit tedious to go through. So there's a lot of realtors out there that don't bother. I found it very important to, expand my education, have that additional license for a couple different reasons. The first being, with me running a team now, I think it's important for me to have that additional education. And this license also does give me the ability to go open my own brokerage if down the road I decide that's something I want to do. The other big thing on here that differentiates myself from the pack a little bit is I do have my home inspector certification. This matters a little bit more on the buyer side, in my opinion, when I'm showing houses with my buyers and I know what I'm looking at. If they have any questions, I'm typically able to answer a lot more because of that course I took and because of the certification I have. Where it's relevant on the seller side is part of my fee for service is, even before listing the house, say we meet for a listing appointment, I like to walk through with a finer tooth comb, just look for anything. Typically, it's more minor stuff that a lot of buyers would bring up and could affect the value of the house. If I recommend that gets repaired prior to listing, I will say so. And anything major, you might have known about it, you might not have known about it. That can be important too, just to know what we're looking at before we get in there. Obviously, depending on your house, if it's move-in ready, it probably won't matter as much as the investor special. Say that needs a lot of work or a little bit of attention on there. So code of ethics and standard of practice. I'm not going to go through this. There is a reason why it's in very fine detail. What I like people to know is as a licensed realtor, there is a ton that we have to be aware of and practice every single day. So just know that you are dealing with a professional here. Next one is my testimonials. Client experience is everything to me, so I do like to show that I've had, a great transaction with both many buyers and sellers over my 3 years in real estate here. It's just very important to me. Most of these guys are my friends. A lot of my clients turn into friends when it's all said and done. So again, something I take great pride in. 6 steps to success when selling your home. One is understanding your goals. Why are you selling, for lack of a better term? Two, preparing your property for sale. We'll get into what that means in a second here. Three, implementing your seller marketing plan. Depending on the house, the location, the price, there's typically tailored marketing plans that'll lead for success. So every situation is different there, and the marketing plan is gonna vary house by house. Determining pricing strategy, figuring out what the house is worth. I typically do a CMA, which is a comparative market analysis. What it does is I look for recent sales in that neighborhood, same size, maybe definitely similar bedrooms if possible, bathrooms, that kind of stuff. We want to find a way to compare apples to apples to help figure out a pricing strategy for your house there. There are pros and cons to both listing under asking and, hopefully jacking up a bidding war to get that price pointing up. There's definitely more cons than pros in terms of, listing your house too high. It will sit, we'll end up having a price drop it. Takes longer. The longer you typically have a house for sale, it's costing you more money. So the whole point is to price it right to a point where we can get it off the shelves as soon as possible. The Buffalo market is still pretty hot. So, if you do price a house right, if it shows nicely, you're going to be pretty successful, in my opinion. Creating a seamless experience. You're hiring a realtor to deal with this stuff. So you don't have to. I mean, it can get very complicated, a lot of documents, some legal stuff. A lot of step-by-step stuff there that you don't have to worry about because you're hiring a professional to do that. Expert negotiation and transaction management. I'm practicing real estate all day, every day. So this is second nature to me, being able to handle that kind of stuff. Understanding your goals. Why have you decided to sell? That's important. Where's the motivation coming from? Are you looking to downsize? Are you running out of room, maybe expecting another kid? Do you need something bigger? Perhaps you're traveling out of state. There's a number of different reasons. You know what I mean? Other things can be, divorce, marriage, all that kind of stuff. So are you looking for another property? What does your timeline look like? And what are your expectations from me as your realtor? These are certain things I like to, discuss up front there. Step two, preparing your property for sale. Make a good first impression. You know what I mean? Certain things like right here, it says enhance your curb appeal. Curb appeal is huge. Sets the tone. It is your first impression. First impressions last. And then the other thing, getting inside of your home in terms of the interior, the two Ds are very important. The first D being depersonalized, meaning, get those pictures of friends and family off the wall, try and replace them if possible with, more universal pictures, maybe a picture of a flower, maybe the sunset, or just leave the wall blank. It's going to be better than, having some personal stuff on there, just because the buyers coming through want to be able to picture themselves in that home. They don't want to picture you in that home, if that makes sense. And then decluttering, just, any extra stuff that doesn't need to be in the house, do your best to remove it or maybe put it all in one spot, typically the basement perhaps. One example of this can be a busy countertop. Some dish soap and a sponge is okay to be on the counter and near the sink, but, maybe last year's tax returns and all related documentation, and that probably doesn't need to be on the counter. The other example I like to use is the TV stand. While a remote is okay, maybe the DVR box, all those stuff on the shelves, anything extra that doesn't need to be there, just get rid of it. The whole point of, prior to listing a house is to make it as showable as possible. Picture it as, maybe the model home in a new build, in a new development. You walk in there and it's just the basics of what you need, nothing more, nothing less. The more you can do that, the more it's gonna flow better at these open houses, at the showings. The other thing on here too, direct attention to your property's best features. If you have a brand new kitchen, take tons of pictures of it. Let's make sure it's in the listing remarks. All new windows in the house. Let's make sure we make note of that. That's important too. The more updates you do a property, we want to show that because that means there's less than the buyer needs to do. The same way we're trying on your end as a seller to maximize value, the buyer is going through there and trying to minimize value wherever possible. Implementing your seller marketing strategy here. I'm going to get into more detail in terms of certain things I do. So I'm not skipping by this. Just want to explain it more in more detail in a second here. So enhanced web presence here. Certain things like I pay for paid advertising, targeted advertising. So, if someone's talking about houses or pre-approvals or looking on Zillow, my face with your properties is going to pop right up on whether it's Instagram, social media, online. Really, really good. Targeting advertising does work very, very well, both on social media and other platforms as well. Jumping around a little bit here. When you list a property, it goes into the MLS, of course, but there's 50, 60, 70 other websites out there. Some I've probably never even heard of. Anything out there that is, showing houses, it's gonna pop up there. You're gonna get it in terms of as many eyes as possible. I personally send out some postcards to the neighborhood, social media ads, that kind of stuff there. So that's huge to make sure we're getting it in front of as many eyes as possible, getting the exposure. Same with open houses. I have the signs. I put a nice premium for sale sign in front of the house. Facebook posts, of course, typical social media marketing. In terms of the showings, I handle all the showing requests there. There's an app called Showing Time. It's all virtual now. Whether you're living in the home or if it's vacant does play, a role in that. But in terms of all that good stuff, again, you're paying a realtor to handle this stuff. Keller Williams in particular, we have not only a national presence, but a global presence. This does matter because in terms of relocation, this can play a big role. Maybe a Buffalo Bills player is looking for a house in Orchard Park, just got signed with the Bills. Could be a number of different things, to be honest with you. The sports one is a pretty easy example that comes to my mind, but people are moving in and out of Buffalo for a number of reasons. Maybe you're planning to move down to Florida, so I can get you connected with a realtor down in Florida that's with Keller Williams. Having this global presence and the technology makes it that much easier to assist you. Other certain things that I will make note of. I don't know if it's on here or not. Okay. Professional photography is huge. Depending on the listing, I have two different pricing strategies. Let me see if I have it on here somewhere. I have my standard package. I have my premium package. Big differences between the two. I do professional photography for both, but on the standard package, it's ground photography only. If you look for the premium package, not only do I do ground and drone professional photography, I do videography as well. If you ever see those videos online of someone, zooming through a house, talking about it, that kind of stuff. That is really huge in this day and age. People love that. No one wants to read anymore. Everyone likes pictures and videos right in front of them. So I'm not naive to that. I understand that what helps sell houses. Does it cost more? Yes, but it's well worth it. Premium for sale sign, not just the stake in the ground, wherever possible. I do like the big white post. Again, setting the tone with the curb appeal right when you get out of the car is huge. Some other stuff here too. I mentioned the photography is the big difference between the two. Open houses, I always toast. That's no issue at all. Bluetooth lockbox. What's nice about that is it actually keeps record of when people showed it, when they're leaving, when they open the door, when they close it, kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool there. And again, these are my two packages here. Standard is at 3.5, premium at 4%. And then on the bottom here, I do make note that I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. The standard in real estate, and I shouldn't say the standard, what you see a lot is the seller offering to pay the buyer's realtor's commission, because on any deal, there is someone that represents the seller. There's a realtor that represents the buyer. Typically, these buyers are pinching pennies to get in the door to begin with, so they can't afford to pay their realtor out of pocket. So my recommendation is always to offer at least 2.5% to the buyer side. 3% is likely preferred because that's typically what you see a lot of in this market. In terms of the buyer side, everything is negotiable. Commission has always been negotiable. There is no standard per se, so I should likely avoid even using that word. Going back a little bit here, pricing strategy is huge. Again, understanding the market conditions. That's where I bring in the comparative market analysis. I call it like receipts. You can all have opinions on stuff, but typically that comparative market analysis is the facts. So while I might have a number in mind, you might have a number in mind, the bank might have a number in mind, the buyer might have a number in mind. That comparative market analysis shows you what the true value of the property is, and that can vary based on, location, size, everything like that. So that's really important to price correctly. If you price too high, what you're going to see is the property will sit. You'll end up having to do a price adjustment. And this window of opportunity they're talking about is, especially in Buffalo, after 2 weeks on the market, people start to wonder, oh, what's wrong with the property? There's nothing wrong with the property. It's just priced a little higher than it should. That's why pricing accurately is huge. Sometimes in this market, what you're actually seeing is pricing lower than the house is actually worth in hopes of getting a bidding war and driving that price up, which does work. I always tell my sellers, the house is going to go what it's meant to go for no matter what. If you price it too low, it's going to get a bidding war, jam up the price and get to where it needs to be. If you price it too high, you're not going to get the offers where you want it. You're going to end up having to drop the price or perhaps getting an offer under asking. So the house price always finds its way back home is what I like to say. Again, getting a pricing strategy that'll encourage buyers' offers. At the end of the day, it only takes one good written offer. Do your best to get it there. Seamless experience, everything I'm describing. The minute you hand me the keys to install a lockbox, I handle everything else. If you're living in the house, obviously I run showing requests by you, open houses, all that good stuff. If it's vacant, it's a little bit easier. So you can be as hands-on or as hands-off on this process as you want to be. Either way, you can trust that you have a professional in your corner. Just briefly here, going to go through from putting the sign into the ground to getting yourself to the closing table. Everything is done, from feedback on showings, detailed reports, evaluating offers, maybe counter offering if we have to, if there's multiple offers, helping you understand why maybe this financing is better, or hey, maybe go with this pricing. Every situation is unique, the home appraisal and that kind of stuff, coordinating a potential closing date, that kind of stuff there. Step 6, just kind of continuing step 6 here, what to expect: pre-sale, for sale, sale pending. So what are we going to do? The declutter, the depersonalization, figuring out a price beforehand, putting it on the market. Are we going to do just ground photography? Is it worth doing, maybe some drone photography, maybe videography, certain things like paid advertising? That's something I like to do regardless. I see the value in it. Postcards, premium for sale sign, all of that stuff I take on up front as fees. And this, it doesn't come out of your pocket, it comes out of my pocket to begin with, but obviously that is part of the fee for service that we're offering here. So what else can I mention on here? Viewing offers. I'm not going to get too deep into the sales process itself here. We just kind of went over some negotiations. I did go over my packages briefly. Have a seller's net equity expense sheet. If you ever want to know what you're truly going to walk away with, I do have the ability to give you a ballpark estimate as to what you'll walk away with. Typically like to bring my to-do list. On every to-do list is that declutter and depersonalize that I mentioned to you. Specific properties might have some additional stuff, top priorities, and other little minor things that need to get done as well. The promise to you here, I'm not going to go through that right now, but feel free to read through some of that at your convenience. Again, you're hiring me to do a service for you, so you expect that to get done and done competently in the right way. Real estate is truly very complicated. I, being in it every single day, still learn something new every single day, so it's really important. There's facts to show that using a realtor, you actually make up to, I think it's 10% more than you would if you tried to do a first sale by owner. There's certain documents. Property condition disclosure, for an example, if you don't fill that out, whether you're a realtor or not, you can get fined for that. So there's a lot that goes into it. In terms of trying to do something yourself, I don't personally believe that this is the one to do. And like I said, realtors typically sell the property for 10% more than you would have anyway. So we pay for ourselves and some. I'm not just saying that because I'm a realtor. I truly believe that and I stand by it. Appreciate you watching through this video. If you have any more questions or need some more additional details, I'd be happy to, go through that with you at any point in time. My contact info is right here. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.